Whole CEO with Lisa G. I'm the best-selling author of The Boss Weight Loss. I'm bringing you the top tips to be unstoppable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually pull up a chair with today's top experts in weight loss, mindset, and business. Learn our top tips to set you up for success so that you can have more energy, be fit and resilient, and feel unstoppable. Welcome to Whole CEO with Lisa G, where top leaders help you with our top tips to be unstoppable in mindset, wellness, and business. I'm so honored today. I'm here with Scott, and Scott Deluzio is an Army veteran, having served 6 years with the Army National Guard, which included deployment to Afghanistan in 2010. During that deployment, Scott's brother, Stephen, was also deployed and killed in action. After returning home, Scott struggled with coping with the stresses of combat, the loss of his younger brother, and just adjusting to civilian life. In the years following Scott's deployment, he noticed other veterans who were struggling their own way, dealing with the struggles in unhealthy ways. And Scott started his podcast, Drive On Podcast, in order to connect with current and prior service members and civilians to discuss personal triumphs, life experiences, emotional hardships, to give hope and strength to the military community. Scott, welcome to Whole CEO with Lisa G.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy to be here. I actually met your dad first on LinkedIn, and once I heard both of your stories as Gold Star family members, I'm just honored that you guys can share your wisdom, because the whole podcast is really about helping others be unstoppable and bouncing back from hardship and just never giving up. So I want to talk about continuous learning and what you've learned and why is that important?
Yeah, so my background, before I even joined the Army, I went to college. I got my degree in accounting, and I worked in the accounting and financial industry for several years. And I realized that it just wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. But in the meantime, I sort of had taken an interest in learning how to code websites. I started off in college, just some small basic sites, and over time, I started teaching myself more and more and more about the coding, and I realized that I really enjoyed it. And so I kept digging into it and diving into it deeper and deeper. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I don't really need to keep working this job that I had in the finance industry. I can start my own business, and I can sell some of the software that I've written for websites and things like that. And I was only able to do that because I was continuing to learn on my own. I took tutorials and classes and things like that on my own, and I was able to teach myself how to do all this stuff. And that's really the basis and the foundation for the business that I run today. And if I didn't keep learning and following my interest and the things that I like to do, I'd probably still be stuck in a job that I didn't really enjoy. And
Wow,
all these years later, I'd still be banging my head against the wall, like, what,
of
why can't I
course.
get myself out of here? Um, but it's more than just, for your career and your business life. There's other things too. Just because you've graduated from college, or wherever you've gotten your degree from, or whatever, doesn't mean that learning has to stop. It doesn't mean that you know
Never.
everything, that
Learning
that
never
learning has to
stops.
stop.
I feel like
No,
if you stop
absolutely,
growing, you're dying. And I really
for sure.
admire how you've pushed through all the stuff that you've had to push through as far as mental health and PTSD.
Yeah.
That's a really important part of your story that I wanted to touch upon, because I feel like now more than ever, at least 40% of our population or more is struggling with mental health. And how can you give our audience tips on how to deal with that?
Yeah, one big thing is never be afraid to ask for help. We all have good days and bad days. That whether you're struggling with mental health issues or not, we all are going to have ups and downs and things like that. But when you start noticing that things are more on the downside for long periods of time, days, weeks, months in a row, like that's probably a good sign that you need to reach out and ask for some help. Go talk to a counselor, a therapist, whatever you want to call it, and um, you know, try to get the help that you need. If that's where you're at. Sometimes just talking to
Yeah.
a friend or a spouse or a loved one about what's going on can be a big relief because sometimes you might be holding something in and it's just weighing on you and it's just something that you need to get off your chest. And if you can handle it by talking to a loved one, that's even better. um, but if you think about your business, any business really, that gets started, you typically will start with a small number of people. You're not starting off as this big, you know thousands of employees and stuff like that, typically with most businesses. And when you start that business, you start to grow, and then you start slowly adding new people, new hires to the company along the way. And that's all because you can't handle everything on your own. You can't do
Right.
the whole
We
thing. You
all
can't do
need
the
to ask
marketing and the
for help.
accounting and the
Oh
everything
God,
else.
never.
Exactly. So
Well,
so
yeah.
it's the
So
same thing with the mental health, I think, is if you can reach out and ask for help when you need it, I think that's really a great place to be.
I love that you mentioned reaching out for help, whether it's from a friend, a family, loved one, professional help, a coach. In particular for me, when I'm struggling with anxiety and stress, I find that just breathing really helps. Like sometimes I find that I don't even realize it and I'm holding my breath. So
Right.
sometimes mindfulness, meditation, slowing down my breath, even noticing, am I even breathing? And then getting outside whenever possible for exercise
Yes.
really helps. Do you have any other tips besides asking for help that has helped you through your family struggles and PTSD and all of the unhealthy ways of coping that we don't recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely don't recommend, a lot of the unhealthy things, the addictions and all that kind of stuff. We don't want to do that. But exercise is a huge thing for me. It's something I try to do. A little bit of exercise every day. It kind of boosts my mood in the morning when I wake up. I'll either go for a run or I'll lift some weights or something like that, and it kind of just gives me a little bit of energy and boosts my mood for the day. Um, but finding something outside of work that is not you know if you're sitting in front of a computer screen or in your office or whatever it is that you do for work, you don't want to do that all the time,
Right.
because that's going to start to weigh on you. It's going to start just being uh, not very enjoyable for you, and it's going to start breaking you down and things like that. So what I would recommend is find a hobby. I recently discovered that I'm actually a pretty decent artist. I've picked up some painting and sketching and things like that, and I'll do that when I'm not working. Sometimes I'll just pick up the sketchbook and I'll start sketching something while I'm watching TV with my wife or something like that, and we'll just do that. But it's something that I can just take my mind off of work and I can just kind of focus on what it is that I'm drawing. But there's tons of other hobbies out there. You can learn to play an instrument. You can start exercising if you haven't done that. You can do all sorts of different things, and it helps take your attention away from the things that might be stressful or bothering you. Not that you want to necessarily avoid them and
Right.
ignore them, but you don't need to be dwelling on those things 24 hours a day either.
Right.
So
Balance is so important. I mean, I wanted to even dive in a little deeper to this topic because
mhm,
the statistics are out there. And since COVID-19 or lockdown, people are actually working more hours. And I find myself sometimes not having those boundaries between work and not working.
right,
And even though not, we're not commuting in the car, we somehow fill all of our hours with work now. So do you have
right.
any boundary suggestions on how people can be happier by not overdoing it on the work thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you brought up a good point with COVID-19 and people working more, it's actually kind of the opposite of what you might think because you would think that people might actually have more free time because if you let's say you work 8 hours a day, but you drive a half hour or an hour to your office every day, that's an hour to 2 hours of driving time that is now just eaten up by your commute.
Yeah,
Um, you would think that you would have that extra time available at home, if you're working remotely now. But a lot of times people think, well, I need to use that time to get some more work done. But try not to do that. Try to do something else. Find some hobby or some other thing that you could do with your time, because you're you're really working yourself to death by using all of your spare time, to do your work. Try to leave some of the problems for tomorrow. Like they'll still be there,
they'll still be
no
there.
matter
I
no
love
matter
it.
how much you work, it's still gonna be there's still gonna be something else tomorrow. So like let it just take care of itself tomorrow. And one thing that I found for myself anyways is that sometimes I will work later and I'll be struggling on something that I'm trying to figure out. I'm working on it, and it just doesn't seem to be coming to me. And then after I finally shut down the computer, I walk away from it. The next morning, I come in. Usually, it's like 10 or 15 minutes later, I figure it out. So really, I just wasted a few hours the night before trying to figure this thing out. But I could have just shut it down, come back into it in the morning, and taken another 10 or 15 minute look at it and figured it out. So the problem will be there, but when you come back with a fresh refreshed mind, and a different mindset, and not so frustrated and stressed about it, you're going to end up coming out with a better result.
I love that. I love your suggestions because I find that sometimes when you're focusing on the problem, you're not focusing on the solution. And if you're just sitting there hammering away at it, just having your creative outlet or your exercise outlet and getting some sleep
Hmm.
and just getting out there and doing the best you can, even now to enjoy yourself, you definitely come out with fresh eyes. And during creative times when you're outside in nature, I find that all of a sudden the solution that you've been searching for might just pop into your head.
And sometimes it does. Like I said, I try to do some exercise in the morning, and sometimes I'm out for a run and I'm thinking about the thing that I was working on the night before, and then it just pops in my head like, oh my god, I can't believe how easy that solution is. And then I like run home and I try to go and fix it or whatever. But it's really true that when you're not focusing on the problem, you end up coming up with the solution a whole lot easier.
I love it. Well, any final tips that you have for our audience on how to be unstoppable based on all the stuff that you and your family have been through and all the wonderful work that you're doing with veterans?
Yeah, one thing that I would say that is a huge thing, especially for people's mental health, is to make sure you found that you have a purpose doing something. A lot of times when people leave the military service, their identity is tied to them being a service member, and when they get out, they have lost that identity and they feel like they have no sense of purpose.
Yeah.
So finding something that's bigger than yourself. I know that's kind of maybe a cliche type of thing to say, but find something that you can serve, whether it's somewhere in your community, at a church, or mentoring somebody in your industry. Something along those lines can really help boost your own esteem and your own mental health, because you feel like you have a meaning and a purpose, and that you're there for something that's not just in it for yourself.
I love that you mentioned that, Scott, because I find that whenever we're stuck in our own head, when we get outside of our head and into our heart and try to serve others, it
Mhm.
can make everything else into a more realistic perspective. And tell us where everyone can find you. Tell us about Drive On Podcast and how can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the podcast, like you said, is Drive On Podcast. You can find it at driveonpodcast.com. It's on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials is also at Drive On Podcast, all one word. And the podcast is really there for veterans, their families, service members to find out that they're not alone in the struggles that they're going through, and that there is hope for them, and that things do get better. Sometimes they're hard, but they do get better. So
Well, thank you, Scott. Thanks for coming to Whole CEO with Lisa G.
absolutely. Thank you.